First thing we got to do is open up our AutoCAD software. Now, it depends on the software that's been loaded on the computer in front of you, but we are just after AutoCAD English. Okay. So if you double click on that, it should open up. I already got the program open up here. And this is the end result of what we're trying to achieve. So you guys are just going to draw up a 2D picture of our lobsterback, which is going to fit into our pot belly. You're going to do, say, the necessary views, which for this is just your front view. All right. And then we're going to convert that into a layout, which will then go on to get converted or saved as DXF and then G code written for it, so it can get plasma cut out. So we go through the process, what you would do, say, if you were going to manufacture this. So I'll close this down and I'll start the same way you would. So if I double click on AutoCAD English, it's opening up on the other screen, but I'll just pull it across when it does. Open. Open the other screen. Cool. Your default page will be probably similar to mine, except you won't have, obviously I do a fair bit on this, so I've got a few projects that I've been working on or looking at. So you can see there's lobsterbacks from other students here that have submitted them and I've checked them. But if it opens up on this page, should open up on this page, we need to just start a new drawing in the model space. Okay. So you can do that two different ways. You can just click new, well, a couple of different ways. You can click this drop down arrow and select a particular template, or we can just hit the start or plus button, add another tab on top. Usually that's the best way for us to do it. It defaults to an ISO drawing standard, so everything is in the metric system. So it works well for us. If you're after something else, Imperial or whatever, there are drawing templates or modeling templates for that, but we don't, it's sort of irrelevant for what we're doing. So like I said to the other guys when we did this, there's a lot in this program. All right, I only know like a 15th of it. I'll show you what I know. My experience is basically converting 2D drawings or converting drawings that you might get on the shop floor into 2D models into the AutoCAD space and turning them into lines and paths that can be created into G code and cut out on a profile cutter, plasma cutter, laser cutter. Okay. So we use a few different tools. The way I go about, well, the way you guys are going to go about drawing this up, probably not the quickest way, best way, but it just uses a variety of tools so you sort of get familiar with the AutoCAD space. All right, so just a couple of things. Not sure what your familiarity is with drawing software, but just a few things sort of to get you started and help navigate this space. As you can see, the crosshairs are my cursor, all right, as I come up onto the top ribbon where all my tools or drawing tools are. Goes back to the pointer. As I'm in the model space, it defaults down to a sort of crosshair looking thing. All right, so this is the model space. All right, to move around, just move your mouse. To zoom in and out, you roll the mouse forward. You can see all these grids seem to get bigger, okay, as I roll forward. So as I roll forward, I zoom in. As I roll my scroll wheel on my mouse backwards, I zoom out. See this little hand that appears? This is called panning. The way to pan across the space is to click the scroll mouse button in. and then hold, while you're holding it in, the little hand will be there. You just sort of pull the screen around to where you want. Notice as I zoomed out, this X and Y coordinate system appeared in sort of the bottom left-hand side. So this you can draw, well, I'm not really sure of the term, but I guess you call it freehand, or you can draw via coordinates. All right, so right down where the X and or the X line, the horizontal and the vertical line intersect, right where my crosshairs are at the moment is absolute 0, 0. All right, so if I select my line, so if I was going to draw a line, notice as I hover around in this space, the numbers to the right there, they're just constantly changing, and it depends where I am in this space as to what the values are going to be. Anything to the right is a positive value, and above the x-axis is a positive. Anything below and to the left, this 0, 0 becomes a minus figure or number. All right. So it doesn't, like, for what we're doing for our purposes, it doesn't really matter where we start our drawing. Okay. We can really start it anywhere. But yes. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where we're drawing from. All right, so just one last thing. So say if I click and draw the thingo, just a bit of a mess. All right. The other thing you might find yourself, or a couple other things to sort of help you navigate this space is this is an infinite space. So if I double click on a line or something I've drawn, it usually gives me a bit of information about it. All right, so it might tell me what layer it is, line type, all that kind of stuff. But if it's just a straight line, it'll tell me the length of it. So right now, that's 139.8165 millimeters. Very accurate, but it's also very small. All right, the model space is infinite. All right, I can draw the same length line. All right, or I can zoom out and draw something that looks about the same line. I double click on that. It's it's a fair bit bigger. All right, we can draw kilometers. You can draw whole cityscapes in this if you want city planning, city design. So you get an idea of the scale. So we can do things or designs down from, say, like little microchip boards right up to plannings or plans for cities. All right, so it can become very easy to get lost. All right, and maybe draw something small when you thought you were sort of, the screen was resolute at that scale, but it turns out you were zoomed out quite a fair way, so you don't really know if you've drawn anything at all. The way to sort of navigate, obviously this is the only reference point you have. Say if you're over here somewhere or you're miles over there and you have to navigate back and try and find what you've drawn, a quick double click on the scroll will, well, it's a hotkey or a shortcut to a command called zoom extents. So it will take you back to just about everything you've drawn. So it's, say if I had that little drawing and then somewhere over here, all right, and I double click, it would zoom in to everything I've been working on in the model space. So it'll kind of centralize me over what I've been working for. All right. A couple of little tools. So double click will zoom back to everything you've been working on. A couple of little things you want to get handy with is the escape key on your keyboard. It's top right hand little button up right up top. So to cancel out of commands, once you've finished, or if you've selected the wrong one, hitting double tapping escape is usually good practice. If you've done something you didn't mean to do, the undo button there, just like your Windows or not Windows, Word documents and stuff like that. Click through some of that to sort of go back to where you want it to be. And then the last little thing, guys, is notice I always do this and I see when I'm talking, you guys seem to get awfully distracted, and I always see this on the screen. All right, you've got a couple of different ways you can select things here in AutoCAD. All right, so see this little funky thing? See how now it's blue? It all depends on which way I drag my mouse when I click. All right, so if I left click, all right, and I keep my finger on that left button and go to the right, it'll do this freeform shape. All right, go over itself and intersect itself. If I escape, if I do the same thing but go to the right when I first select, it goes blue. Okay, now it can be hard to select what you want when it's a weird shape. Our brains seem to work better when we got square lines and straight edges and stuff like that. So to get it to become a box like this, you just click and let go and drag your mouse over what you want to select. Now, you have a blue box and a green box, and they select lines or objects in this space two different ways, all right? So if I come over here and I go to the left, all right, notice how as soon as I touch this line, it highlights. As soon as I encompass that other line or a piece of it into the green box, it highlights, and then I've selected it. So you've got a node for the endpoints as well as one for the midpoint of the line. So it's selected those two lines. I can then hit delete on my keyboard and get rid of them. Now just remember that delete and backspace are two different things. Delete is what will erase objects in here. Backspace won't do anything for you there. Now, if I go, instead of going to the left, go to the right, right, it won't highlight it. I have to encompass the whole line for it to highlight, for it to select it, and then I can delete that line. Now, you might not see the relevance right now, but say, if, like, look at the situation I've got going on here. I want to keep this line and I want to keep that line. I can either go through and select everything that I want to get rid of, or I can do that. Go to the right, select it, delete it, and I've just kept what I wanted. All right. So try to remember that. It is a handy little function, the way it works. All right, so most of those little tricks there, or not tricks, but tools in this system will sort of help you navigate and move around. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, or we're going to have to do, is sort of start drawing. All right, so here's our drawing for our segmented bend or lobsterback. It's got an OD of 114, material thickness being 3 mil, angle of turn of 90 degrees, centerline radius 100 mil. So if you notice those dashed lines in there, they're our half segments. All right, so we've got two full segments here and two half segments. We break our full segments into half. That'll give us all our half segments, or our 6 half segments. Okay, there's 200 mil add-ons at the end. That just increases the length of the lobsterback. That'll give us a bit of clearance from the top plate as we, put this in and get around and turn it into a chimney. I think that's about all the information we can draw off of this page. So when we look at what we're trying to make up, we need to do a few calcs. You guys have done these calcs anyway. We're just bringing them up again so they're, front of mind. But we're changing our finished dimensions, our OD, into a mean diameter. We're then turning that into our mean circumference. They're two numbers there in the red that we're going to need to reference as we draw this up. So our mean diameter is what we're going to be doing our layout to, all right, to make sure we get the right finished product once it's rolled up, as well as the mean circumference when we go to make our flat pattern. So that's going to be the width of our lobsterback before we roll it up. So when it's our flat sheet, got a couple other things in there for inside radius and stuff, which will be, what you're using when you make your sets up to roll this up. But right now, for a layout point of view, we are more concerned with the mean diameters. Okay, so off of this we have angle of turn of 90 degrees, so say flange to flange, swinging a space of 90 degrees. Like I said before, those full segments we break up into half, count the number of spaces in between, divide that by our angle of turn. That'll give us angle of cut of 15 degrees. We use that with a bit of trigonometry to help figure out what our half center line radius is, or half center line height, sorry, not radius. From there, we're building a picture on, say, how high our pattern needs to be, or how much material we need to be able to cut this pattern out of. Okay, so that'll give us 367. So our pattern width's 348.5 and our height is 367. So that's just taking into account a couple of kerf allowances as well, which, depending on your plate thickness, you may or may not want to do. Select the line tool, all right, and we'll use these more and more, and the more we use them, the less I'll talk about them. But this up here is your ribbon, all right, and this is what we call our home ribbon. It's a home ribbon bit basically because a lot of the common tools that you use to draw are on this ribbon. You got insert for blocks, annotate for dimensioning and putting notes on drawings. You got parametrics, so you can work out constraints or add constraints to certain lines. Like I said, there's a lot of things in here, and I'll gladly say, 80% of them I don't know what they do, but I know how to get myself around this. Okay, so we're going to spend most of our time here, okay, in the home ribbon tab using draw palette and the modify palette, and we'll do a bit with utilities as well. Okay, so your draw tool, your common drawing tools are up here. You got a few other ones that aren't used as often down here, as with the modify. All right, so we'll go through and use some of these just to get you familiar with it. But as you go over it, or as you go to select something, if I just stay there for a brief second, it will give me a description of what it does. If I'm staying there for a little bit longer, it will give me a more detailed description of what I can do. I can also say that, like, AutoCAD has its own little suite of educational, whatever you call them, I don't know, educational products. So like you can go on here and they'll have tutorials. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, they'll have educational tutorials on things to work through and how to use tools and best practices and all that sort of stuff. It is, if you are interested in this, it is the best way to go. All right, so if I select line, it's gonna prompt me with commands. So depending on what tool we're using, there's a certain amount of commands in each of these prompts, or each of these tools. Sorry, so it's asking me. You can see it down just below my crosshair there. It's saying specify my first point. It's also got the command line here. I can type it in there, or I can use a keyboard to navigate on these highlighted numbers on the screen. So like I said, it's an infinite space, particularly for what we're doing. It doesn't really matter where we draw or where we start off with, because everything's going to be based relative to where we start. But what I'll get you to do on the keyboard, see how my 30.2798 is highlighted at the moment. So as I get closer to the vertical line, all right, as I get closer to the vertical line, that gets closer to 0. Now I want to start on 0, 0, but it's very difficult for me to exactly, I'll be within a hair of it, but I won't be right on it. And that's the issue. One of the issues you have with CAD is that your ability not to join lines together is pretty easy if you're not careful with what you're doing. So once we start drawing, we'll use our snaps and stuff to ensure that we are connecting lines, but just remember, creating parts to be cut out, the programming software or the pathing software that'll be telling the machine where to go will not like gaps in your drawing. It will stop cutting and then it'll start another pierce at the start of the new line, which is, usually not what you want when it's supposed to be one solid line. So to start on 0, 0, instead of trying to find it, what I'll get you to do on the number pad, it is a lot easier to use your number pad on the right hand side of the keyboard. Just make sure your num lock is on. So that's the top left hand button that says num lock. You'll know it's on because usually I think with the keyboards we have, the Dell ones, there's a little padlock which has a light below it. That will be on when your number lock is on. So make sure it's on, then you can just hit 0 on the keyboard, all right? And then to move across or toggle across to the next value, you can hit tab, which is on the opposite side of your keyboard, and you can hit 0. And when I hit tab again, you don't have to, but you see those two values are now locked. So I can either lock it onto the X axis at a certain point or the Y axis at a certain point, then I might be free to move it around where I want, say if I was trying to locate it somewhere half specifically. But to execute a command and not escape from one, so to execute a command, so once I'm happy with those two values, I can just toggle back and forth and change them to my heart's content with the tab on the keyboard. All right. So if I go 0, tab 0, I can then select enter to execute that part of the command. Then what it's going to do is prompt me, where do I want the line to finish? Where do I want the end point of this line? That's the next part that it's going to prompt me. So it's saying line, specify next point. Okay, so I want to pick a spot on here accurately. That's the key, accurately. So right now I'm only like 3 mil big. That's how zoomed in I am. All right. Now, there are a couple other drawing aids which we're going to use, and these are down here in the bottom right hand side. We'll turn them off and on as we like, or as we need. All right. So what I want to do, my centerline radius is 100 mil. So I want my line to be 100 mil long. But I also want it to be flat. I don't want it to be a degree off. I don't want it to be 7 degrees up. I want it to be flat. Okay? So to make sure that I stay flat, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to turn this, well, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to turn ortho mode on. What ortho mode does, see where my cursor's up here now, it's going to lock me into the horizontal position. And if I go close enough to the vertical line, it's going to then assume that I want a line that's vertical. Okay? So just make sure that everything I'm drawing is perpendicular. All right. There are other ways you could have done this, but I find this probably a bit easier. So we're going to definitely have a nice straight horizontal line, not on an angle. So what we're going to do is on the number pad, type in 100. And to execute that, hit enter. Now it's going to want another line. All right, it's going to ask me where on my other line. I can keep drawing lines. Say if I wanted to draw a box or a pentagon or something like that, I could just keep drawing and then I could connect them together. If you've finished drawing all the lines you want, which we have, I'm going to cancel out of the command and hit escape. All right, so we've got one line there at 100. I'm going to select the line tool again. And now that we actually have a bit of information on in our modeling space, you can see as I hover over it, it's connecting, say, to the midpoint or to the end points of the line. So these are what we call snaps, and they are a way of ensuring that we are connecting up with a line or a part on here to make sure there's no gaps. All right, so what I want you to do is just hover over. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it just sort of flicks itself over to it. When you're there, left click, roll out a little bit if you want, but just draw another line in at 100. Type 100 in on your number pad and then hit enter. all right, and then hit escape. We still have ortho mode on, or you should still have ortho mode on, so it's just come straight up. All right, next thing we've got to do is use circle command. Now, the line tool only has one way of sort of using it. Obviously, you've got the start of a line and the end of a line. With a circle, it depends on the situation as to what kind of circle or what kind of information you want to put in. It might just be circumstantial, you know, if you're trying to just fill in make a nice shape and you're just trying to touch a couple of tangents between two lines or something like that. We can either just select the tool, which is what I'll do now. Select the circle tool and you'll see the blue line here is the information that we need to put in. All right, so what this circle one is a center and then radius. So if I hover over it, it'll tell you step one is tell CAD where the center needs to be. Step two is tell CAD where or what radius this circle is supposed to be at. Okay, so selected the circle tool. My center, I want to be on the end point of this line. Okay, my radius needs to be half my mean diameter. All right, and my mean diameter is 111, which means my radius is 55.5. Okay, if I didn't want to work that out for whatever reason, I can then change the option to center diameter. Okay, so if I select center diameter and do the top there, and I put in 111 and hit enter, I have the same size circle, but I've just sort of made them two different ways. So the thing is, with this program, there is more than one way to skin a cat. All right, there's heaps of different ways you can do the same thing, and you figure out what works best for you. It only comes through using this a lot that you find other tools or different means of doing something. Okay, so right now you should have something that looks like this. And I'm just going to sort of roll through this, and you need to pause this recording and pause the video to catch yourselves up and, you know, take it back a notch or take it back a couple of minutes or seconds, whatever, just to go over something if you miss something. You know, obviously don't have the opportunity to stop me and ask me questions, but I'm going through it reasonably slowly. All right, next tool we're going to have a look at is on the modifier ribbon, modifier palette up here in the home ribbon. So it's something that's not commonly used, all right, but it is a handy tool. So what I want is these lines that I've drawn to cut through the end of my circle. And I don't want to draw another line that starts here and finishes there. What I want to do is increase the length of these. You can do this a couple of different ways, all right? I'm going to use this tool called lengthen, all right? So if I select lengthen, what I first need to do before I click anything else is I need to right click and I need to change the way, or I need to designate the way that this tool is going to work. Okay, so here are all the options: delta, percentage, total, dynamic. They're also down here on the command bar, which I could actually type in using my keyboard. So I want dynamic. I'm going to right click and then left click on dynamic. I could have also just put in dy once I selected the lengthen tool. Now the way this tool works is if I want to lengthen this line or shorten it, I need to select near the end that I want to lengthen or shorten. All right, so I want to move this end over. So if I click, I don't have to click right on the end, I just sort of click somewhere there and I drag it, and it'll pick up or reference the end of this circle. So I'll select here and I'll come up to there. Okay, once I've done those two lines, I need to hit escape on my keyboard to cancel out of those or out of that command. Next thing I need to do is draw a couple more circles. So what I'm going to do now is make sure I'm back on center radius. So see how the last circle we drew was center diameter? For the time being, CAD's just going to leave that as our default selection or preference. All right, we want to change it back to center radius. You'll see that the main selection or the default preference will now be center radius again. I want to draw in 3 circles. So I select my circle tool, select that as the center, drag it all the way out. So this is another way of drawing a circle. Instead of specifying a measurement, I can just reference space or place on the drawing. So what I want to do is reference the end point of that line, or the edge or one of the quadrants of my circle. I want to do that for the middle and the end. So you should have something that looks like that. Okay. Then I want to go through and I want to use the trim command and remove some of these excess lines that I have. So when you're drawing this up by hand, we obviously don't have to put in all circles all the way around, and some of your development lines are all done neat and light. But with this, everything's sort of the same thickness with the settings we have on here at the moment. We're not going to use layers and turn things on and off. We're just going to remove the excess stuff. So the next tool we're going to use is Modify Trim. All right, trim tool is pretty intuitive now. I can trim a few different ways. Okay, I'll run through them with you. So it's understanding that this line that we've drawn in acts as like a fence. So it's going to, depending on where I select, it'll give me, I'm not clicking anything right now. As soon as I hover over it, it's giving me a little preview of what's going to happen. So if I'm on this side, it's going to get rid of everything on that side of the line. If I'm on that side, it's going to get rid of that. I want to delete that, get rid of that, that, and that. All right. Should end up with something like that. Now, I don't want to go through and delete anything else at the moment, so I'm just going to hit escape, and that'll cancel out of this trim command. All right, the next thing we got to have a look at doing, now that we've got our arcs in here, we need to start putting in our profiles, or not our profiles, our divisions for our segments of our lobster backs. So obviously it's a 90-degree turn, right? But we have, how many we have? So what we have here is a 15-degree segment line. Okay, so 90 degrees divided over our 6 segments. So over here, what we need to do is draw a couple of lines through this to divide it up into 15-degree segments. All right. Now, if I select my line tool, you can see it's going to be very difficult to do that while I'm in this ortho mode. So what we need to do is come down to this bottom ribbon and turn this ortho mode off down here. I can now draw at any angle I like. Now, I don't quite care what the length of the line is as long as it passes through this arc. So if I hit tab, I then have an option to just designate an angle. So obviously my first one is going to be 15 degrees. I can then select the line tool again, start from where my center radiates from, hit tab, and I can do the next one at 30 degrees. Okay. Now you'll notice when you draw lines in here, we get what they call polar tracking. So say if I draw a line, see how I get a green line? And your line sort of snaps onto it at the 90-degree or 90-degree quadrants. All right. We have an option to change that. So next to our ortho tool, we have this option here called polar tracking. Right now it's set on 90, 180, 270, 360. We want to change that for now to 15, 30, 45, 60. Okay, so just swap it over. You can then select your line tool, tell it to start from there, and you notice as I hover up, it's going to track onto my 45-degree angle. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to hit escape. And do the same thing again. And it's tracked and found 60 degrees. Come up again, and it's going to do my 75 degrees. All right, so it's just a different way of doing it. It's just utilizing some of these tools to maybe make things a little bit easier. One thing you're probably getting sick of doing now is selecting line tool all the time. So there are hotkeys, and the more you use CAD, the more you get familiar with them. But if I want a shortcut or hotkey off my keyboard, I can just hit L. And you'll see if I keep typing, I get other options, but if I just do L on its own and hit enter, that's a short key or a hotkey or a shortcut, whatever you want to call it, for the line command. So if I ever want to draw a line, I'll just hit L, enter, and I'm good to go, good to start. Okay. What we need to do now is trim these little spines back. So the trim tool will select again, but instead of doing it singularly, what I want you to do is click and hold the left key. And you can do like a free form shape. It's quite handy to use that to trim odd things off. Then hit escape. All right, the next step is we need to draw up lines going straight from where our ends of our lobsterback are to where they sort of first intersect this 15-degree line, okay? So what I'll get you to do is just sort of zoom into the end piece here, select ortho mode, hit L on the keyboard and enter, and on your center, make sure it snaps on the center, just come straight up. Now don't try and click on the line, because what it's going to do is it's going to want to snap to something. So just draw a line out in no man's land there, okay? Hit L again. Draw one up here. Oops, I shouldn't have trimmed those lines, but that's okay. Hit L again and draw one up here. And silly me, I wasn't supposed to trim those lines back. All right, so yeah, silly me, we should have kept those lines a bit long. But if we go modify, back to that same tool, modify lengthen, right click, dynamic, bring it out. Don't snap onto there, just go out past and we'll trim it back. Sometimes that's the only way. All right, so here, escape, trim that back, trim that back, trim that back. All right, so hit the escape tool, get out of lengthen, select trim, trim back those lines. Okay, we can do what we've done here. We can do on the top, okay? So we'll do that now. We'll go line, enter, or L, enter, coming out straight, L, enter, coming out straight, click, escape, L, enter, snap onto there, over here somewhere, click, escape. All right, and then I will lengthen, right click, dynamic, go a little bit past, and we'll just trim those little bits off. All right, so they all stop when they hit that 15-degree line. Okay, next thing we've got to do is select our circle tool again as a center radius, and I want to start my center from here, and I want to snap onto the end of my vertical line there where it hits my 15-degree. Do another one for the center and another one for the outside as well. This is the step that most people get wrong. Okay, I've really buggered us up with trimming those lines back, haven't I? Okay, we'll get to using the tools a little bit more. We'll go back to lengthen, all right? And I just want you guys to lengthen the 45-degree line. All right. Now, once you've lengthened that out to that where it intersects that circle, select the line tool, and starting from this point, we've got to turn ortho mode off, all right, because we want to be drawing at an odd angle now. Select or deselect ortho mode, come up to there, where your 45-degree line hits the outside of that last outer arc or outer circle you've done, and select there, and then go on and connect it to the other line that comes straight up out of the end where it hits the other 75-degree line or 15-degree line coming back the other way. Okay, it gets a little bit busy. Once you've done that, hit escape to cancel the line command, and then we need to do that for the middle and the inside. They're obviously a bit smaller, so it's harder to see. So I'll select the line tool, select the end of my perpendicular line off my center, come to the outer arc here, and then back to my other perpendicular line, hit escape, select the line tool, do that for the end one as well on the outer arc, and then come back through and select the end there. Once you select the end, hit escape. Once you've done that, instead of trimming anything, we were just using those last 3 circles we put in as reference marks, okay? So you can just click on all of them and then press delete on your keypad. The reason why I leave these internal arcs in here is just as a guide for you guys to make sure you've done the right thing. So these arcs here were our original arcs to start off our layout. Now see how my straight line, as I come up through here, it just touches the tangent of that arc, and it does it here, and it does it for all sides of my lobster back. It's a good way to double check to make sure you've come up and you've come across to the center of your lobster back correctly. All right. Once you've done that and you've checked that and everything looks good, you can get rid of them. Then you might be able to see now, we might delete this circle too, we're starting to get something that looks a little bit more lobster back-ish. Okay, so the next thing we've got to do is divide this up. So we need to bring generator lines up onto our lobster back so we can pick up the information to get that 15-degree intersection there. Okay, so the way we do that is by using another tool off the drawing palette. What I want you to do is select the drop down menu, and we want to divide this up. Now we've got 2 different ways to divide it up. All right, we've got a division by how many we want to put into something, and then we've got a division by specific distances between points. We want to put a certain amount of points onto our circle. Okay, so we want to divide by a number. So select number. What it's going to ask you is select the object to divide. You need to divide your circle. So highlight your circle and select enter. Now, we divide our circle by 12. We do that because it's enough information, especially for this scale, to get a decent angle. It also divides very easily with the compass. So there's 2 reasons why we usually use 12, just because of the way the compass divides, or the radius divides into a circle. Okay, so punch in 12, hit enter. Nothing's happened, but something has. Okay, you've now divided this into 12 bits. However, you can't see them. You divided them into points. Now, point style is just a white dot. which over a white line you cannot see. So we need to change our point style. So we do that up here over utilities, all right, on the right hand side. Yours, sometimes they look a little bit different the way they're laid out, but it is in utilities. Ooh. And we want to look at point style. So select point style, get a little pop-up box. You can pick any of these. Right now, see ours is a white dot on a black background. Can't see that. So if I change it to say a plus, or it doesn't really matter, select and go OK. And there are all my divisions, okay? Now I need to draw up vertical lines from these points. So if I select my line tool, we have another issue. We're only snapping onto endpoints and midpoints and quadrants, all right? So we've been using snaps for, to help us draw. Sometimes they can be a bit of a hindrance, so you do need to turn them on and off. And you can change what snaps are actually in play. And you do that down here on this bottom rhythm. So this button here turns your snaps on and off. So see, I'm not really snapping onto the midpoints anymore, or endpoints of lines. That's because my snaps are off. I still want them to be on, so I'll just reselect it, but I want to add another one. All right, so what we've put in there are nodes or points. So we want to be able to snap to our nodes, so make sure that's ticked. At any time, if something's being very annoying, like you keep snapping to the midpoint of a line when you wanted the end point or whatever, you can come back here and just turn it off, and then come and draw more successfully over in the model space. But we've turned nodes on, and you see now that you snap to the node. So start a line and just connect it to the next one. Hit line, enter, snap onto the endpoint, snap on the one above it. Line, enter. Don't worry about the center because you already got that. Ooh, that's the wrong button. L. So do that for all of your points. Now, once you've got that, we can get rid of that. Don't need that circle anymore. We don't need the lines that are underneath, and we don't need the lines that are above it. See, this always happens. Rushing through, I missed something. I gotta go back. I need to extend this line. I want all my lines to carry past this 15 degree. All right? Because they are our line lengths. All right, these are our generator lines, which are going to plot out the curve we need on our plate to be able to achieve a 15 degree cut once it's rolled up. So they all need to cut through there, and they all need to start here, finish here. Okay. Now these points can get a little bit annoying. So instead of going through the time and deleting them, I usually just change them back to a white dot. They are still slightly noticeable, but not so much. Right, so there is our nearly completed lobster back. The last thing I want you to do is to have a look at adding on our little 100mm . So we're going to go and select our line tool again. I'm going to snap onto the end of that line. Probably a good idea to come over here and turn ortho mode on. Come over and enter 100mm. Hit enter. I'm going to come down. Now instead of putting 111, which is what that is, if I want to reference another point, if I just drag my mouse over there and say get it to snap onto that endpoint, and then staying within this space and using my polar tracking. You have to have a pretty steady hand for that. You can see that I can use my polar tracking to snap onto the same distance of 111. It's reading 111 right now. All right, I can then click and come back and close that off in there. I can do the same for down here. So select line tool, come down 100 mil, enter, come across. I can either type in 111, enter, or I can try and reference that mark. Okay, come up to there, hit the line, and hit close. All right, so there, well, actually what we can do also is we'll just get rid of all of this. Okay, there's our Lobsterback, lovely. All right, the next thing we need to do is convert this into a flat pattern. So if we jump back over and just have a look now. I've just zoomed in a little bit. What's that? What that is referencing is this distance here. Okay, the end of our pattern, we're going to start from down here just so it lines up. What I want you to do is just make yourself a little bit of space on the left, or sorry, on the right hand side of your layout. Select rectangle. All right. Before you draw, instead of drawing on 0, 0, we're going to come over and just hover over that corner and then try and keep our cursor or our crosshairs on that same horizontal line. Use the green polar tracking. Doesn't really matter how far, but just a bit of a gap away. And that's where when you click, and that's where your rectangle's going to start. Okay, so our height, if we tab over to that, should be 367 mil, and our width is 348.5. Once you're happy with those two measurements, you just put in enter. All right. And then that's the sheet space that this Lobsterback is going to take up. All right, the next thing we need to do is to divide our flat pattern into 12 lines. Okay, so what we're going to do there, if you notice, well, if we do the calculation, we are, there is a calculator in here too. There it is in utilities. I'll pop it up. Oop, comes up on a different screen. Don't use this all the time, but it is there as a handy little tool. All right, so our base was 348.5. We want to divide that by 12. That's 29.041. Okay, I'll say that. Now, if I go to use another tool now in the Modify tab, this is what we call Offset. It's another really handy tool. I use it a fair bit. It will want a distance that you need to offset by. Now you can use this either referencing something on your drawing space or your model space, sorry, or you can just put a measurement in. So we want 29.041. So if I go 29 0.041 and hit enter. And then I'm going to offset this line here and just do that across the page 12 times. If I select the rectangle, notice how everything comes in. That's not exactly what I want. I just want this side to come in. Okay, so the reason why it's doing that is if we select it, it is recognized as a solid object as opposed to separate lines. Okay, so what you got to do is use another tool in the modify palette called explode. So if you select explode, it'll ask you what object you want to explode. Select all the objects you're wanting to, and then once you've done that, you hit enter. And again, one of those ones that sort of nothing looks like it happens, but if I go and click it now, you'll see that instead of the whole thing getting selected, they're just lines, no longer a joined rectangle. So if I now select my offset tool again, it's remembered my measurement. I hit enter. And now the way this works is I've selected the line that I want to offset. I just need to tell it which side I'm offsetting that line. So I want to go within my rectangle. So I come over this side, don't have to get it on there exactly, just go to the right or to the left. I go to the right of the line, I click. To the next one and I click. Just keep running along. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Ooh, missed it. There we go. Once you've done that 12 times, you can hit escape and cancel that command. The next thing I want to do, I'll probably give that too, is offset. Well, I need to bring these distances across. All right, so I'm trying to make a grid pattern here to pick up these measurements. So I'm going to use the offset tool again, select offset. But however, this time I don't want to do a distance, I want to reference something on my page. So I'm going to go back and write T instead and hit enter. All right, now it's asking me select the object to offset. So I want to offset my baseline. I want to start bringing lines up horizontally. So I'll select that, and then what I want to reference is this line here. And then I want to offset the baseline again, but I want to offset the start of my cut. And I can offset this line here, but I'll come up one. Select that line again, come up to the next one. This line again to the next. This one again. I think you get the idea. You just come up all the way up to the top. Okay. Then once you've done all the lines you need, hit escape. Now, this is where you got to use, well, you don't have to draw this line, but I'm going to do it so it kind of gives you an idea of where to start. All right. So the reason we can, or we've gone through this before, but because we're trying to be a little bit more economical with our material, if we rotate our seams on our lobster back and put them on the center, it reduces how much material we need. And that's only going to work for us now if we start the seam in the correct place. So if we start the seam on this center, and then in the next part will be off center, okay, we need to start our curvature from this line here. All right, that's just why I've drawn this line, so it just makes it easy to identify. Whether you go up or down, it doesn't matter too much. Just do the same way I do. But what we need to do is draw a curved line in there. And to do that nicely, we use this tool in the draw palette called Spline Fit. All right. So select that, and then we want to start here. So it's going to snap onto that line. And then the best way to go through this is to go across one and up one. And your line is going to start to appear. So you go over, up, over, up, over, up till you hit the top, and then we need to start going over and down, over and down, over, down, over, down. and you just work your way along, all right, until you hit the bottom line, which is this one here, and then we start to go up and across and up and across and up and across, and then you just hit enter, and that executes or finishes off that line. So we should have finished and started on the same line. If you haven't, done something wrong. So go back and just follow your pattern again, okay? All right, now what we need to do is use a few tools in AutoCAD instead of doing that. How many other times? We've got a join here, which is this join. So that join is this join. We have another join here, and we have another join there. Okay. So what we need to do is offset a line, another 100 mil down, which will be this distance. All right. So that, if that makes sense, this part down here and this part up here aren't really part of our pattern. However, they are part of the overall lobsterback. Our pattern starts from inside these lines. Okay? So now, what we need to do is just divide this up into the spaces we need. So if we go back and have a look at our calculations, okay, we'll have our center line height is this distance here, all right? So our half pattern, what we've worked out is the center line height for a half segment. We've got two whole segments. All right, so there lies our half pattern height. So what we can do is go 27. Oops, sorry, I was supposed to go offset, and then type in 27 and hit enter, and then offset that line and offset that line. Now this line here is that line there. Okay, we come back down, we can offset that line, which will be this line here, if that makes sense. So we then need to just get rid of all the lines that we do not need. Okay, so you should have something that looks like that. Now, what we're going to do is start using the mirror and rotate function and copy function to move this up to where we want our next cut line to be, and also to rotate it. So what I'm going to do is use the copy tool, copy, select the object I want to copy, which will be our cut, because this angle here is the same on these two parts. They are identical, they're just a little bit bigger. Once you've selected all your objects, hit enter, select your base point, which is just going to be here, bring it up to here, okay, and then also bring it up to our other cut line. We don't want to copy any more than that. We only have 1, 2, 3 cuts. So once you've done that, hit escape. However, our pattern will go from looking at us to rotating 180. So we need to make some adjustments to this middle one. Okay. So what we're going to do is mirror it. So the mirror tool, what we need to do is select the line to mirror about, or we need to, sorry, I'll escape out everything. We'll select the mirror tool. We need to select the object we're going to mirror. That's the first step. Hit enter. Second step is to select the mirror line. So we're going to mirror about this center line. Okay, so I've selected the end of this line and I've selected the end of that line. Do we want to erase the original object? Yeah, we do, because we don't need it anymore. Okay, we've now rotated the pattern 180 degrees. So what we can do is select all of those 12 divisions, select our 100 mils, and select those two other lines, and we can delete them all. Okay, and what you're left with is a flat pattern and a layout for your lobster back. Now there is a little bit more that you need to do to this, okay, to make sure it cuts properly, as well as doesn't just cut it in half. We need to actually put ends on these lines, or sort of have little stop points in them, so the machine actually does a stitch cut. We're not going to go that far. It's enough of an exercise to do this. What I'll get you guys to do is to save the job, which is probably what we should have done at the start as well. So to save your item, hit the floppy disk up in the top corner. All right, find the folder, okay, that is appropriate for where it should be getting saved. Okay, save it in there under Lobsterback with your name. Okay, and it's going to save it as an AutoCAD DWG file. So hit save. Then what I want you to do is come back up and do the save as, which is the floppy disk with a pencil. It's going to still have the same name, but I want you to change the file type. So I want you to hit this drop down menu and change the file type to DXF. Alright, Lobsterback Chris DXF, and hit save. I've done this a few times, but anyway. So yeah, do that. Let's cancel that. Save it as a DXF as well. And what I want you to do is to email me a attached copy of this, so I can double check how closely you followed my instructions. Hopefully this was slightly helpful.